Do you believe in alternate universes? You are listening to Delayed Replay, the improvised movie review podcast. Wink. Everything is fine here. We're all fine. Just sit tight and listen to them talk about the movies they definitely saw. Don't delay. We have to listen right away.
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
I think that's the first time someone's actually given me the proper response. I usually do that all the time, and no one asked me the General Kenobi.
Yeah, man. On Clone Wars, the 2008 show, it's kind of cringeworthy hearing Grievous say hello there, but, thankfully, comics have shown that Obi-Wan has said hello there before that show, so it's not like he got it from Grievous.
Right. Nice.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we talk about some of the recent movies, even if they've been a couple months old, and we recap/review them in a delayed fashion. This time, we're talking about the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. And guesting on this episode, I'm talking with the champion of the multiverse from Star Wars Report and Star Wars Beyond the Films. It is Mark Herleman.
Hey, how is everybody doing? Glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion. Great movie. Great series of movies, I guess we could say.
Might as well call it a series. We're probably going to make a third one, so yeah, why not?
Right. Well, I figure with the ending the way that was, the third one, they might as well have just done the old Back to the Future and said to be continued.
I guess first we'll talk about, very briefly, the first movie, which was The Hitman's Bodyguard, which came out 3 years ago. So what were your impressions on that movie, Mark?
Man, I thought that was an action-packed ride full of great vulgarity. I think anytime you get Ryan Reynolds in a movie with Samuel L. Jackson, it's a recipe for awesomeness that they need to just duplicate more often. I want to see them pop up in a lot more genres now, just because of how much fun I've had with these two films. The first one, especially, I think it really just showcased the type of humor that you can expect from this franchise. I mean, Samuel Jackson's little one-liners and stuff and his little quibs to Ryan Reynolds' character back and forth, and the quick little, every time they're dropping a 4-letter word, I giggled. I almost peed myself a few times just out of just pure sophomoric humor.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, so it's basically like Deadpool and Nick Fury before, I guess now Marvel will be able to have them together at some point if they want to, but at the time this was the closest you could get, basically.
Mm-hmm. Selma Hayek's lines, I think, were every bit as great as Samuel L. Jackson's, because I wasn't expecting that type of vulgarity to come from her, first and foremost, and then when you see the violence of her character play out throughout the movie, it made me excited that when I found out they were doing a second one and that she was going to factor in so heavily. It was oh, here we go.
Yeah. What's kind of weird is that the trailer for the first movie, it didn't, I'm not sure why, but something about it didn't make me excited to see it, so I kind of skipped it in the theater. But when my brother and our friends were hanging out, we watched it on YouTube. By the end of it, we're that was surprisingly good. I guess some of the critics weren't very into it, but I thought it was very funny, very humorous. There were some parts where you could tell it's green screen or blue screen or whatever, but overall the cast had chemistry and the jokes were funny and the action was great.
Yeah, when I was rewatching it, I noticed there was a lot of lens flare in scenes where it was almost kind of like they were trying to make the location seem more than what they were. There was one scene where it was blurry enough, but I felt like it was almost inside a dairy farm. like you could just see where the cows were going to come in, but they had like all the milking equipment was blurred out enough that you didn't realize that's the type of building they were in. But there were also moments like that when they were outdoors and stuff where bright, especially around Ryan Reynolds. And I don't know why they chose to do that, because it didn't seem to be like a J.J. Abrams Star Trek kind of thing where it's flares everywhere. It was just certain scenes that they did that a lot. But you know, I think the way that the characters interact in the first one and the way that their relationship grows, the way they pick up on that in the second one, I really appreciate, because when you watch the first one and you see the different relationship, not just between Darius Kincaid and Michael Bryce, but you see how eventually, as you learn, that relationship affected Michael Bryce's relationship with his then girlfriend at the time. I like the way that progressed and played out through the story. So when we get to the second one, I was curious about how much of that was going to come back over, you know, if they were going to show us the relationship was still together, or if they were going to pull one of those, oh, you know, they split up, because it has been 4 years since we left off with these people. So it was interesting to see the direction they decided to take.
Yeah, the second movie, The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, came out like the end of August. It came out the same weekend as Star Wars Celebration, so it was like we weren't sure if we could like see it right away, but we did end up seeing it like when we had time. But do you want to go on a tangent about Star Wars Celebration, since like you went there and like we could like reminisce, and I could like splice this into the Celebration episode I'm doing with different people? Okay. All right, so I guess with that, we'll head back to the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, and like this Celebration segment, like I said, I'll splice into that other episode. It'll be interesting, like editing all of this, but yeah, that's the fun of podcasting, I guess. So yeah, the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. What'd you think of how the relationship between Reynolds and Jackson's characters evolved by this point? It's like a few years later, and like we see where they are now.
You know, I was really impressed with the way it handled. I mean, you know, right out the get-go, I picked up on. Well, I didn't pick it up the first time. It was only when I was watching the first one a second time. I was like, oh, that's the whole Big J. Okerson scene. When Reynolds' character first starts off, he's doing the Celebrity Protection Service, which, if you were paying attention at the end of the first one, he's telling his girlfriend, well, the ex-girlfriend, that he wanted to launch that. And to have Big J. Okerson, that guy's got the dirtiest mouth. So as soon as I saw him, I was expecting something more with the character. I was a little bummed that he was just kind of a throwaway character, but I think they used him well, because at one point I was hoping they were going to bring him in to be kind of like the Joe Pesci to Gibson and Glover kind of thing, but they didn't go that route at all. But the back and forth banter between those two characters with Darius Kincaid and Michael Bryce, and the way I think Kincaid's character really has the more dominant aspect of the relationship, you know, because it's kind of like, you know, you're going to be doing this for me. Like everything about why he wanted Bryce there just made sense. But at the same time, the way that he would play up on, you know, well, you got your big AAA bodyguard service back. Like, I love the continual jabs. It was like, Kincaid just never let off from the last movie. And right out the gate, they just came and hit the ground running in that aspect. It was definitely a fun twist. Well, without being a twist, it's kind of almost what you expected.
Yeah. And like, you see like a little montage of them having fun times, like, parties or whatever, and like you get like the Cinco de Mayo celebration, and like, you know, Darius's wife Sonia is there, played by Salma Hayek. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to keep the character names straight. I feel like I see the actors' names first, like in my perspective. So right. We'll see how that goes.
Sonia. Yeah. See, and I when they first talked about, when I first saw it, you know, they didn't give you too much details and stuff. I was honestly expecting the bodyguard to be a new bodyguard. I wasn't expecting it to be Ryan Reynolds' character. And then when I saw Ryan on the preview and stuff, on the pictures and stuff, I was like, oh, cool, sweet, he's still there. But the angle, and that's why I think it really plays well with Kincaid's character, because, you know, you could feel the heat of him, especially after watching the first one, and his love. I mean, the fact that he basically walked right into the cop's arms because he was told, you know, something was going down with his wife. And as it ended with him escaping for their anniversary, you're just like, where are they going to put Kincaid? And the way that they had it with him being on the run still from the last one 4 years later, and the fact that he couldn't talk to Reynolds' character openly, he had to do it all incognito. Like that moment where he's in the trash can giving him the message totally felt like Inspector Gadget. I was dying in that moment.
Like the cartoon or the live action version?
No, the cartoon one where the chief was always sticking the notes out and then they would explode wherever he was at because Kincaid couldn't be seen. He's like trying to keep his whole body away. Like every one of those times where they had those moments. Oh God, here we go again. He's in the post office box.
So yeah, the conflict of this movie is basically that like Sonia goes missing. Like she gets kidnapped or whatever, and so Darius and Michael have to like team up again and try to find her. And how do you think about how that plot took off?
That was weird because I wasn't expecting her character to have any kind of cybernetics smarts, right? And the fact that she was needed to stop the cyber attack in Europe, and that the whole Interpol plot was like, because what was that guy's name? He's from the Umbrella Academy. Tom Hopper plays the big dude in that show. I had no clue that he was even, because like you see the previews and stuff, and he's not in there at all. Right. Then you look up at the cast and stuff, and he had such a bigger role. I wasn't expecting his character to be as bombastic as it was. I mean, I've only seen him in a few things, and he's usually playing like more of a thug. To have him be as flamboyantly exciting and entertaining as he was, I mean, there were times where he almost reminded me of Klinger on MASH, because it's just the over the top, like, oh, you don't want me to do this? Okay, I'm just going to do it then. And it was like the back and forth between him and Ryan Reynolds, and the way that Kincaid's character was just laughing it up the entire time. They really used Tom Hopper as Magnuson as a great foil for Bryce's character, and I absolutely love that, especially when Kincaid would give him all that crap about the AAA stuff. And even when we got later Ryan Reynolds' character having his own AAA bodyguard, that's where I was really kind of feeling like they were going to work towards a trilogy at some point. You know, I mean, they brought in enough characters. It almost felt like when you get to the 5th Fast and the Furious movie and you're like, okay, now we've got a franchise crew. Now there's a group of people. Now we've got, you know, a performance that we can do with an ensemble cast. I mean, think about it. With Morgan Freeman's character in this and Antonio Banderas, I wasn't expecting any of that. There were so many characters that had just roles that just showed up out of nowhere. Frank Grillo, I mean, the guy that played Crossbones in Captain America: Civil War. Like, his role was almost up there with the Vanisher in Deadpool 2. It was like, blink and you missed him.
Yeah, and like Antonio Banderas is in this too. Like he plays Sonia's ex-boyfriend, which is pretty funny given their like acting history together. Like, have you ever seen like Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico?
Yes, love both of those. Great movies. I mean, and honestly, time Antonio Banderas does anything, even if it's an animated cat, he does awesome.
Oh yeah, because like they played Puss in Boots, and like Puss in Boots' girlfriend in that Puss in Boots movie several years ago.
Right. And I even noticed too that when she went into his apartment on the penthouse, there was a little scene in the corner where there was a row of cowboy boots next to the closet. I was like, that's got to be for the Puss in Boots.
Yeah, the Mariachi trilogy is really good, and like some people forget that it's a trilogy because they have that weird first movie called El Mariachi where the main character isn't played by Antonio Banderas. Like they recast it for the next couple movies, I guess, because he's more popular or something. I don't know.
Right.
But my introduction to Antonio Banderas growing up was as the dad in the Spy Kids movies. I don't know if you ever saw those.
Yeah. No, I remember those. In fact, that was Shark Boy was our boy, the werewolf from the Twilight. I can't remember the character names, but yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, like Shark Boy and Lava Girl came out like a couple years after Spy Kids 3D, I think. And it's wild, like recently I rewatched Zathura, which also came out in 2005.
I love that movie.
Oh yeah, I so badly want that to have a sequel, like after they're done with like Jumanji movies or whatever.
I'm in that same boat. I keep trying to think like how you could tie it in where you find out that Zathura is like the same game. They just changed the name or something. Like, have a way to tie them both together really tightly. It'd be fun.
Right, because like I looked up online that like Zathura and Jumanji were written by the same author back when they were books, and apparently the Jumanji game appears in the Zathura book, but they don't have that connection in the movie. But they could find a way, and like Jon Favreau directed Zathura, and he like did a really great job with it. Like it still holds up.
For real?
Yeah.
How did I not know that? Wow. The more you know.
Yeah. He went from Elf to that within like a couple of years. But yeah, I guess the point I was making was like seeing Kristen Stewart and Taylor Lautner like in Zathura and Sharkboy and Lava Girl back in 2005. It's like I had no idea that they would be in like the Twilight franchise or whatever.
Right.
Like it's really weird.
I thought it was interesting that we went and took a trip back to Bryce's family home, and we got to meet his mom, played by Kate Nichols. And the fact that Kincaid was hitting on his mom so shamelessly throughout that scene, and the way that Reynolds kept calling him on it over and over again, I was just like, oh my God, this is terrible. And you just kept waiting for Sonia's character to walk into the room and bust him, because she's a no-nonsense type in that movie. That's what I like about her, man.
Right. It's like, dude, Darius, I know you're just joking, but you're married. Like, this is kind of cringeworthy.
Right. There were so many different, we had the Italian mob, we had the Russian mob, and then there was the Chinese triad. Oh, that scene was so great when we saw them all come together and they're trying to tiptoe out without getting caught. And the whole time I'm just like, this isn't going to end well, because every time it's always Darius that ends up, causing the big ruckus. Like in the first one where Reynolds walks out, he's like, you're not even going to make it an hour without me. That whole scene when they're tiptoeing through there, and when you see Dragon, the guy that played Vlad, going out there and he's with Victor. I don't know which one of those two Russian guys were my favorite, because Victor's accent was great, but Vlad was just so over the top evil.
Yeah, like seeing all those different like groups come together, it felt very Battle of the Five Armies, like in The Hobbit, which I guess is fitting because like this movie also takes the characters to New Zealand. Like they go all over the map in this movie. It's really bonkers. Like I don't know how high the budget was for this.
Right. Right. I mean, and the fact that you could turn the cyber attack in that direction where, you've seen plots like that before. Even Fast and the Furious did something like that with the God's Eye, where everybody's trying to get it. But in this case, it's like everybody's trying to get it because everybody wants to keep it out of the cops' hands. Like, I was like, oh, well, that's a cool twist.
Yeah, and like when Sonia does reunite with Michael and Darius, she has some really great action sequences as well. She gets like the two guns, and like she's a pro shot at these types of things. And it's like, oh, you better watch out for her.
Right. Well, when she went into the Triad's main base and was shooting all those people up to save both the guys, and she shoots there between the eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like some dude in a panda suit, which was really bizarre.
The scream of the guy in charge was priceless. It was crazy. Yeah, the scream that guy did, it reminded me of Meet the Fockers or the first one.
Meet the Parents.
Yeah, well, when the urn breaks and De Niro's like, he does that kind of thing. I must have rewound that like 15 times. And I kept thinking during that scene when that guy screamed how much I would love to rewind. I can't wait to get this on DVD and Blu-ray. I'm going to be rewatching that scene so much.
Yeah. There's also the scene where like Darius like drops he loses his guns during the fight. And so he tries to grab the nearest thing, like, in the room, and he sees, like, a Force Effects lightsaber, because, like, they're in one of the bad guys' rooms, and I guess the bad guy has, like, a lot of geek memorabilia. And so he gets, like, a purple Force Effects lightsaber and uses it on him, and, like, beats the guy, and then tosses the saber to the floor. And Ryan Reynolds' character is, like, you would be a good fit in Star Wars. And then Samuel Jackson's character is like, I don't watch that shit.
Right. He's all purple's not my color. I died. Oh, yeah. Oh, purple's not your color. That's a good one, man.
Yeah, it's just so cheesy, like, to the point where it's almost fourth wall breaking, but it also kind of fits because, Ryan Reynolds pretty much is Deadpool, so you do have, like, a bit of fourth wall breaking there, and it's just magnificent.
Right. You notice too that some of the scenes locations had really weird things going on, right? Because while we were in New Zealand, they went to that Starbucks, which I don't know if there's a Starbucks in New Zealand. So like that first I was like, is that a thing? Like I had to stop and take a moment. But then I realized when you see the orchestra sitting down in the pit off to the side inside the Starbucks, I'm like, okay, well then clearly this is a little different than normal. Like what in the heck is going on? But they're out there, they're serving up all the fruit and everything, and oh my god, the innuendo with Sonya's character and the dang bananas. I was like, please God, no, don't go there. I was like, my son was there, and I'm like, dude, don't watch this, please. I'm getting embarrassed for us both.
Right. Yeah, and because I've been to England and they have Starbucks there, but they're like 2-story buildings, it's weird. Like they even have like 2-story Burger Kings and KFCs over there. It's bizarre. But
see, when I went to the Bahamas, they had that with both McDonald's and Burger King. In fact, the McDonald's had a playground up on the top. But the weirdest thing about it, though, was that the McDonald's flame broiled all their burgers and Burger King microwaved theirs. It was the weirdest week of my life.
Oh, man. I'm going to need to eat later, but yeah, like your mention of McDonald's reminded me of something. I've been listening to this podcast recently called How Star Wars Is It? So their premise is they take everything in Star Wars, boil it down to a chili. And so that's like a 10 out of 10. That's all of Star Wars. And they're basically comparing everything to that. So they'll do an episode on, for example, like Avengers, and they'll rate it on a scale from 1 to 10 based on how Star Wars it is. Or like Pokemon, they did an episode on that. This week, I listened to their episode that just came out on McDonald's, and they're talking about how like McDonald's used to look like really fun and cool, but like now it just looks more modern, or I guess like it's trying to follow current trends. And like when I saw your post earlier of like the two different, like you shared this image from somewhere of like a really fun looking red looking McDonald's and the current more boring like grayish brown McDonald's, and I just
the 70s through the 90s McDonald's where it looked like a kid's meal, and now it's like I've grown up and gone to work and hate my life.
Yeah, because I have no idea if McDonald's is like still fun, because like I'm not at the point where I'm a kid anymore, so I have no idea what the Happy Meal toys are like now. So like I don't know if it used to be better or if it's just that I'm older and unaware. So I don't know.
Well, I think first off, it would be better today, except the fact that they got rid of all the toys and stuff that kids would play on, which honestly, that's why most kids went there in the first place. And they replaced them with really cool tables with technology and stuff that break. But yeah, you get rid of a playground, though. I mean, that's the number one thing. I mean, my littlest still, if there's any McDonald's in town that she wants to go to, it's the one with the indoor playground. And I mean, that's been the number one problem with McDonald's is they took out the kid element. They forget who the mascot is, who the mascot's there for. He's not there for mom and dad. This isn't Saw. This isn't it.
Oh yeah, I did a Spiral from the Book of Saw episode recently too. But yeah.
Nice.
There's also this cartoon in the 90s called The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald. I've seen a bit of that. It's really weird, but like a guilty pleasure, I guess.
I want to say that they use those models for a lot of their commercials, because I vaguely remember seeing Grimace and the Hamburglar in one of those episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I also vaguely remember there's like this YouTube video or something where like someone made like a fake trailer for a Hamburglar movie, and it's like, oh, dark, gritty, like Batman sort of thing. It's like he's all grown up and like going. Actually, I don't know if this was an actual McDonald's commercial or something someone made up. I'll have to look for it later. But yeah, it was like a 20 or 30 something year old person like deciding to like go back into like his Hamburglar like identity or whatever, and I don't know if I'm just imagining that there was a car, because like it would be super cool if there was one, but I don't know. It's just one of those weird, funny things.
Right. Oh man, there were so many great moments in this movie that like
right. Getting back to the movie
when they're running through the theater complex, right, and they've got the triad on them, and the Russians are on them, but the Italian group got wiped out in the crossfire. And Reynolds' character, Bryce, goes into the stall and fights that other triad guy and ends up breaking the guy's neck in the toilet bowl. And he comes out, he's like, do not go in there for at least 15 minutes. I was laughing so hard just because of the look on his face when he saw that guy when he walked out. I was like, oh my God, talk about being caught with your hand in the bowl.
Yeah, like during that whole fight, I was hoping that the toilet was like super clean and that nobody had used it. And if it's not clean, I hope that guy died like immediately, because I'd feel super bad about that.
And dude, and that's where I got some history, because I myself have been a movie theater janitor, and I could tell you the things that come out of humans' bodies that get left behind for the janitor are ungodly big in theaters. It's just like, well, what are you eating and why? Like, oh gosh.
Oh man. But yeah, like the movie theater scene was like really cool. They had like this little jab about like the giant like expensive like popcorn buckets, and they use that as like weapons, which is pretty funny. But yeah, like there are all sorts of like really fun action sequences. Like it got to a point where like I wasn't even following the plot anymore very well, but I was like super into it because of like the chemistry between like Salma and Samuel and Ryan, and also like the fun jokes back and forth, and all the like the impressive like moves that they did when like fighting people.
Right. And they picked that right up from the first one. Because, I mean, you think about like the second half of that movie and it's almost all chase at that point. Like it's just built up so much when they get down to like less than an hour to getting Kincaid into the courtroom. And, you know, you go from the bike or the motorcycle chase to the boat chase to the car chase to the on foot chase. You know, and so having that being kind of redone with, you know, Tom Hopper as Magnuson and then Veronica. Oh my God. And that girl, the girl playing Veronica was like, oh dude, that girl is badass. Like if you're going to ever get anyone to play another version of Black Widow, Gabrielle Wright could totally knock it out. Like that girl had badassery in even her pinky. Like just the way that they filmed those scenes with her and Hopper going toe to toe, back to back, taking out all those triad guys. That was cool. I kind of felt like, though, in some ways, if it wasn't for the dialogue, though, that Hopper's character was almost not needed. They could have brought back Ryan Reynolds' girlfriend and had her been promoted to that position. Even like the fact that they only talked about her was kind of bothersome. I kind of was really hoping that she'd have made it too. I mean, think about it. Richard E. Grant even came back to reprise his small role.
Right.
And that was like a throwaway role. And she couldn't come back to reprise her role in this one. Like, I did appreciate that they put her into the dialogue, but I kind of really wish that they would have done that. Like, and I felt like Tom Hopper, I mean, he did a great job, but I kind of think like they could have cut him out and put her in and it would have worked.
Yeah, it's like one of those weird things where like a love interest of a character will like be written out. Like we had that with Natalie Portman in Thor Ragnarok, but
right,
like she's coming back for Thor Love and Thunder, which is really surprising.
Right.
But I mean, Betty from The Incredible Hulk, she hasn't been mentioned at all since then, even though her dad has appeared in like other MCU movies.
Right. Right. So what did you think of the twist there at the end when we found out that Morgan Freeman wasn't just Kincaid's dad, but he was also the head of the triad?
Like, he had basically, like, been working with them, and they, like, promoted him, like, based on, like, how many kills he had done, which is a weird way to, like, decide who's in charge, but whatever. They also mentioned that they promoted him just because they really liked his voice. So, like, I think his voice is just very persuasive.
Right.
And so, like, when that was revealed, it very much felt like the I am your father moment, which is funny because of, like, Samuel L. Jackson and the Star Wars connections. And so I wasn't, like, super emotional about it. I just thought it was kind of funny that they went that way, even though you could tell Samuel L. Jackson is, like, he's, like, trying to do this convincing look of, like, shock and disappointment. But I do think, like, their back and forth, like, Samuel L. Jackson and Morgan Freeman was, like, a really great back and forth. And just hearing, because these two guys have really great voices. It's weird because, like, Morgan Freeman has the more, like, calm, reassuring voice, and Samuel L. Jackson's, like, the tough, hilarious, vulgar voice. So, like, he even did that one. There's this one book called I'm gonna bleep this, but it's called Go the Fuck to Sleep, and he's, like, just reading it as if it's just some ordinary story time book. It's just so funny.
I think what was really cool is because, like, you don't normally hear Morgan Freeman cuss at all, but then to have him cussing at a level beyond Samuel L. Jackson to make it why Darius Kincaid cusses so much is because of his dad. Like, that worked. But I think the only time I remember seeing Morgan Freeman play a character anything close to that was, like, in Now You See Me. When he was playing the kind of, like, quasi bad guy, good guy in that one, you're like, okay, I don't know. But to see him go full evil there at the end was just like, ooh, I mean, I kind of want to see Morgan Freeman do that more often. You know, you almost had that Kevin Bacon kind of feel where you're just like, ooh, I really want to slap this guy right through. Like, you know, when they play evil so well that you almost take it personally, where you're like, that person's just got to be just.
Oh, like Sebastian Shaw in X-Men First Class.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I was genuinely shocked at the twist. I wasn't expecting that. And the fact that he shoots Sonia and for, like, I'd say almost a good quarter of the film, we think she's dead. I mean, that was shocking. And then the way that they brought her back and resurrected her was, it was kind of over the top. I don't know. What did you think about that?
When they shot her, I was like, oh, I'm going to be super mad if she does die, because I feel like this movie has made her my favorite character of the main three.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, like, trying to, like, hold on to hope that she would be coming back. And then it turns out that, like, she is fine, like, because, like, she fell over a railing when she got shot, but it turns out she dug the bullet out and, like, used some, like, alcohol and other stuff that she found nearby to, like, cauterize the wound. And, like, there's, like, a match with fire and whatever. So I was glad that they did bring her back, but I also wish that they hadn't done the fake out, because that was just less time we could have seen of her, like, interacting with the others and taking part in this action. Like, I get that it was meant to, like, fuel Samuel Jackson's character to make him, like, super angry at his father and just not hold back when fighting him. So I guess that kind of worked, but I also feel like they didn't really need to, like, write Salma Hayek out for that amount of time, you know?
Well, you're right too when you think about it, with the name having, I mean, it doesn't say her name in the title, but the hitman's wife, I mean, it's about her just as much. So yeah, I think the thing that irritated me was the way they kind of Ocean's 11'd it. Like, you know, everything happened and you thought you saw what you saw, and then they go back and they show it. Oh, it wasn't from because when they first shoot, you know, you see her getting shot from that railing. It looked like she took a bullet to the face. I was like, oh my God. And then she went spinning over the edge so fast, you couldn't tell. But then when they went back and they show it from the other angle, and you can tell that he shoots her into the collarbone, and he's like the angle of the gun. Like, yeah, I don't know. It felt like almost too cheap at that moment. It was like, it's the hat trick. Okay. I know what you're doing there. And then, like I said, with the name and the title, I think I agree that I think it was a wasted opportunity where they could have done more with her just for shock and awe.
Right.
And the gag with Antonio Banderas where he was sitting there doing the, oh, my mancherie. I was like, okay.
He like got out a guitar and was like hitting people with it. Yeah, but I am glad that when she did come back, she was like full force and like basically like took down like the whole like organization single-handedly, and like the three of them like walked away with like the explosion behind them. You know, it's a cliche, but it's cool to see with these actors / characters.
Yep. No, man, I really enjoyed it. And in fact, like I said, I wish they would have ended it on a Back to the Future note where they would just flat out said there's going to be another one. You know, the title was a little weird, especially when you think about like how little she played into the overall role because of the fake death scene that they put in and stuff. Because that, I mean, once they did that, it was I did start questioning like, why are we calling it this? Why didn't we give it a different name? But then when she came back, it was like, oh, okay, now it makes a lot more sense. I get you. I'm down.
Right. Like the naming scheme is kind of weird because like if a series has some titles with numbers in it, then it's easy to follow. But if it's like Hitman's Wife and Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, I guess he could sort of follow, figure that, okay, the one with more words is the second one. Right. But then what happens with like when we get more, like the Hitman's Wife's Butler's Bodyguard or the Hitman's Wife's Butler's Dog's Bodyguard or something like that. It's like, I don't know what they're going to do with the naming scheme after this.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. It's probably going to be like the Hitman's Bodyguard's Bodyguard. Well, I mean, and we did have that with Merrick Lynchburg playing Bryce's bodyguard, but that was just, that was such a quick moment though. Like honestly, like if you weren't paying attention and if Bryce hadn't mentioned the AAA, like I think that most people wouldn't have even caught that was going down. Maybe that's foreshadowing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it does feel like there were like hints at the end that maybe there could be a third movie. Like there's even that line of like, let's not do this again for like another couple years. I figure that's like however long it'll take to make a third one if they want to.
Right. Now, how much of the budget do you think they blew for that scene in the awards, where they went to that awards pageant, where they had the guy was giving out the awards? We had all the different people there. I mean, they had like Lady Gaga was there, Steve Tyler. I mean, there were so many people from today out there. The Kardashians showed up, which is, of course, you know, like if they're going to get everybody, of course, there's going to be at least 2 Kardashians in the crowd. There was just so many people that I was like, do you think that they like put out like a random call and just ask people to come in? Because there were so many people that at points I almost wondered if it was clips from like Video Music Awards or from the Tonys and the Oscars and stuff.
Yeah, because like the cinematography looked a bit different. Like, you know how there's some movies or shows where like you're watching them and then all of a sudden they're showing like an award ceremony or something like that. Like the camera will feel different, like it'll look more real compared to like the artificiality of the movie cinematography. So I don't know if it was like archive clips or what, and I'm also bad at like guessing budgets for these types of things. Like I just think of that like Seinfeld episode where George is like asking Jerry about the jacket and like how expensive it is, and he's getting super mad when he thinks that it's even more expensive than he thinks. So he's like, "You're sick. You are sick." So like, I have like no comment about the budget. Really.
Right. It was fun though to watch Samuel L. Jackson punch out Stuart Alexander while he was handing out the award. Like, give me that! Boom! It's like, oh, he hit him with the award right on the nose. Like, it looked like that was an actual connection too. It's just like, damn.
Right. I guess with that, we can go into final thoughts and score out of 10. So what are your final thoughts and score out of 10?
You know, it was a fun ride. And I think, you know, if you've watched the first movie and you enjoyed what you saw, you're going to enjoy it. It like the Fast and the Furious movies. It's kind of like, you know, you're known for this kind of thing. And this franchise's thing is lots of swearing, lots of bullets, and lots of action. And they definitely provided on that front. You know, the plot, I felt like some of it could have been stronger, like I said, with the ex-girlfriend who, basically they got back together, but that all happened off screen. I felt like they could have done more there. So I think if I was going to have to give it a ranking, that'll probably hurt it overall, because I enjoyed everything else, but that really naggled me throughout the movie. I just kept wanting to know, like, in everything with Hopper's character, I was just like, they could have just used her for all of this. Like, man, what's the point? So I would say I'd probably give it like a 7.2. It's still pretty strong overall, really good. But it's definitely not the top of the class.
Yeah, that's fair. I have similar thoughts. Like, it was very fun, like great action, great humor, but like you said about the ex-girlfriend, and also like what we talked about with like Salma Hayek's role, like she definitely had more of the best moments, but I feel like they didn't need to write her out of that like chunk near the end. Like, that docks some points off of it for me. But overall, it was still entertaining, even though like the plot was kind of hard for me to follow at times. It was just like, I'll just turn off my brain and watch what happens. And it was like fun.
It's more like, well, they're all bad guys. We get it. They're bad guys.
Right. So I think I'm giving this one a 7.8 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like very close to an 8 out of 10, but I don't think it's quite there. Like, I know I've been gushing about the parts of this movie I really like, but I do think that the first movie may have been slightly better overall. But I don't know. Maybe they'd like flop back and forth after rewatches. I'm not sure.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I'm feeling now.
Right, and that's the thing too, is like the funny scenes were so funny. I'm looking forward to rewatching it. Kind of bummed that I don't have that opportunity, because like, before we sat down, I rewatched the first one again, and I'd forgotten, like in the van where they're doing the singing, and Samuel L. Jackson's getting into the French, like, I forgot about little things like that. And sitting here talking about this one, and half of those scenes just start popping back up, like with the presenter getting popped with the face with the award and stuff, and the whole trash can scene where Kincaid's trying to get a hold of Bryce and tell him, I need you to do me a favor. Like, those little moments, I had almost completely forgot about them. If I hadn't taken notes for this, that, they would have slipped. But being able to rewatch it and get to have that experience, because that's the thing about the first one, right? Like, if I hadn't seen the second one, I would have forgotten all about it. And it was a fun ride, but it's one of those that, like, you watch it and you set off to the side and you just kind of forget about it. And then when you come back to it, it's like watching a whole new movie that you're just like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember this. And I love a good movie like that, where it never gets old, even if you might have forgotten about it for a while.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you mean.
Good stuff, man. I mean, it was still a fun movie, and then it's always fun to talk about these kind of things.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So once again, thanks, Mark, for being on this episode with me. Where can people find your stuff?
Well, you can find it all at www.starwarsreport.com. I'm on the Star Wars Report podcast there on our podcast network, as well as Beyond the Films. I used to host that with Nathan P. Butler, but he recently retired after 18 years podcasting. And then Jim Laheen stepped in, another timeliner extraordinaire. So he and I have been gone back to Legends, as it were, for a little bit, getting some Legend stuff going. And then you can see me out there on the internet as Illogical Rogue 2. Although if you see me on PlayStation 4, it's probably my son. He's tried to officially steal it, but I'm like, dude, no, I've been Illogical Rogue 2 for longer than you've been alive. So yeah, that's me out there, except for on the PlayStation 4. That's probably my son playing my account, because honestly, I don't play much online stuff because I'm not good at it anymore.
Well, if it's any consolation, I'd probably be bad at it, since I don't game as much as I used to.
Right. It's sad when, I remember playing N64, and playing the games on that system and stuff, and then being really good at Battlefront on Xbox, to the point where like none of my friends would want to play against me. And now on this system, I'm like, I'm dead so fast. I'm just like, what? My son's got his sensitivity jacked all the way up, and I'm just like, he's spinning around and I'm ready to vomit, and I don't even see the shots he's taking. He's just like shooting, and then all of a sudden, headshot. I'm just like, what in the? And then he does this thing called no scoping, and I'm like, that's wrong.
Yeah, dude, I was really good at the original Battlefront 2, to the point where like whenever me and my brother would like pick up the game to play again, like years later, we would like it would just take us minutes to just break back into like how good we were at that game. But then playing like the newer ones, it's like, oh shoot, how do I do this? And it's just like an entirely different world.
Right. I mean, in a lot of games now, they have to slow the action down so you can get through it. I mean, could you imagine in that triad scene, if that was in a game, like how much you'd have to slow things down to be able to shoot the way that both Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson's characters were shooting that amount of people dead? He'd be like slowing the game down, and then like a 30-second scene would take almost 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, I mean the Ryan Reynolds movie that came out earlier this summer, Free Guy, kind of touched on that, so that's kind of
oh,
but yeah. All right. So I guess with that, let me just check if like anyone has sent in emails. I doubt that they have, but let me check.
That's when you cue the "you got mail" sound.
Yeah, like that one movie, You've Got Mail. No, I know it was like the AOL thing back in the day. I remember that. Let's see. Yeah, normally there's like nothing. There's just like spam emails on this.
No.
But yeah, if any of you want to like email the podcast and like comment on coverage of whatever we've covered, you can email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com and we may read your thoughts on the show. And as for my plugs, you can find me at Steven Schinder on Twitter and Instagram, and Steven Schinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can also find my fantasy horror comedy novel Lemons Will Make Rain. It's available on Amazon, and you can find more details on it on stevenschinder.com. And I've also been writing/editing for Culture Slate,
Nice.
and they are at Culture Slate pretty much everywhere. So yeah, thanks again for joining me on this episode.
Yeah, man.
Mark.
Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and without further delay, have a good day.
Bodyguard. What he needed was a mind guard. But now the cerebral amusement park is almost ready.